Death and sex are fundamental pillars to our existence as humans, so talking about them and other taboo subjects evidently helps us see and understand more about the bigger picture. This is Skull Babylon, and you're about to listen to episode 95 of Paradigm Shift Radio, in which we explore the realms of the taboo. Along with our friends, we approach the question of what is death and what it means to not be afraid of it. As the conversation progressed towards the topic of sex, we explore the theme of sacred sex and our primal relationship with it, and how our sexual energies are something all of us can become more conscious of. Enjoy this and all the other past episodes of Paradigm Shift Radio and more inspirational conscious media through the main website at ParadigmShiftCentral.com, and consider helping the growth of the show and the community by signing up as a monthly supporter for only a few dollars a month. Thank you for your support in helping us help change the world. Help further by sharing PSR with your friends, continue the conversation, be open to shifting your paradigm, and get involved with future episodes. Enjoy the flow, and one love. This is Skull Babylon, and you are spiraling out with us once again for another episode of the longest running interactive community show to help assist in the evolution of consciousness. Paradigm Shift Radio is with you. You are here. You are now, wherever your now happens to be. So welcome once again. It's good that we can sort of have this little chat every once in a week, that we can sort of helix back. And I know I say that quite often, but it's nice. You know, more and more we begin to see Paradigm Shift Radio as the potential of what it can be, which is a very potent sort of a fire pit community gathering place that we can always sort of definitely just check in with ourselves at. So yeah, just thanks again to everybody who's I was like giving like a thumbs up there for a second over the radio, but I'm just like, yeah, that's how I feel, you know. Thumbs up to the team. Just keep doing what we're doing. And what we want to do before this show officially gets rolling is, of course, being able to share it with more people on the internet, which is, of course, where a lot of things are going down these days. You know, it's all about them internet. So let's do what we can to help get the show out there. And one of the ways to do that is just by like finding the thing, letting your friends know that it's live, and that it's some pretty interesting stuff that's going to be happening here on Paradigm Shift Radio tonight. And I know every episode is sort of different, so I'm really curious to see where this one goes. And of course, that is the realms of the taboo. And we're sort of focusing it in around the topics preliminary. This is the idea. Start off with the topics of death and sex, and that just continue to see where the conversation goes, while inviting you guys, while inviting the community onto the show to be able to interact, to be able to share your insight, your just perceptions of what it is. What is taboo is the question. And I've already had an interesting discussion with the local Paradigm Shift London community that I'm a part of, and I just sort of put that forth to the group that we had on Friday. And just, you know, it'll be interesting to see where this goes, because I think it can be a very subjective thing, and it depends where we're looking at, like what part of culture considers different things taboo, compared to other things. So we'll go with it, and of course we're going to bring on our good buddy Michael Brazel, and he's going to help wingman this. And we'll bring on some other callers. So if you do want to get in on the beginning of the conversation about death, and I know Michael will have a lot to say about that, and I'm actually quite excited to see where he takes it. But I know a lot of other people also have a lot to say about death, and it is a taboo thing. So we'll bring Michael on, and in the meantime, please, for those of you who want to get involved with the conversation, this is your chance to do that, to be able to contribute your voice to this practice as consciousness. That's what we're doing. Remember, this is all about practice, so it's nice that we can just sort of just come here, give it a shot, see how it goes, record it for the record books, and continue to learn from there. So that's how we're going to bring on our good buddy Michael Brazel, and we'll go from there. So Michael, if you're ready, bring you back on to Paradigm Shift Radio. Here we go.
Hey.
Hello. Hey, dude.
How's it going?
Good, man. Good. Just I was out in the field earlier, like same routine as last week. I mentioned I've been getting into the habit of just exercising while watching the sunset. Is kind of my routine that I want to get into. So it's nice little mini ritual that I can create for myself. And the thing that I love, just because I was literally just like running up and down across the soccer field without a soccer ball, but then I was beginning to like implement other practices into it, something as simple as taking a tennis ball and tossing it up in front of me, and then like grabbing the tennis ball like while running and aiming for that 100% accuracy. So it's like kind of ninja training while running.
Nice.
And then you don't. And the trick about that is that when your mind is on something else, you don't seem to be tired or drawn down by like the running in the same way. Whereas if you're just focusing on running. So, anyways, that's what I'm up to. But yeah, that's. How about you, man? Anything off the bat? I mean, I know.
Yeah.
You've a lot of what we're going to cover here on the show tonight is stuff you've covered on your own Blog Talk Radio show in different ways. So and just tell people about that, if you don't mind.
Yeah. So me too. I just came in from a workout and I taught a meditation class, so I'm like jazzed up and calm at the same time. So it's
that's the feeling.
Good stuff, you know. But taboo topics, I think it's we do a lot of, in spiritual communities, we talk a lot about sometimes the more fluffy stuff, the stuff that talk about like Reiki and healing and meditation and lucid dreaming. But when it comes to the heavy stuff, we often do what I call the spiritual bypass. Like we'll bring death up as a topic, and then people will say, oh, well, we don't die, we just transfer into another reality. But the reality is we actually die. This body will cease to exist. It's growing old as we speak. It will get sick, and it will eventually cease to exist. And I think when we do these spiritual bypasses, or these bypasses for these topics, we trivialize some of these very profound and very magical experiences, because the death experience is one of these truly mysterious parts of our existence, because we have a lot of theories and ideas of what happens when we transition, but until we do it ourselves, we really don't know, and it's one of those mysteries, and we try to put it into these little compartments, and I think it's wonderful that we can explore that, but we can't ignore the fact that the body itself goes through a very magical process when it exits and leaves this world. So, and we do this with lots of topics like sex and drugs and other things. So I think in order for us to have a full understanding of the spiritual walk, we have to look at all of these topics from all sides objectively. And I think it's important for us to have those discussions in a place where we can get, a multitude of people like sharing their ideas, because it helps us to refine what our concepts of death. And it's not saying anyone's right or wrong, but it just helps us to shape what our own ideas of these things are, because they are heavier topics, but necessary for us to talk about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've always had. It's interesting growing up, like with death. There's a lot of thoughts that I have about it, but I'm really interested in just opening more so than not opening again, encouraging and opening this up to the community to call in. We have one person on the line right now. So I know there's a decent amount of people that we got 16 users in the live chat. Just keep you guys in sync with the numbers as well. And again, just using that as a motivation and encouragement to see how much further we can continue to expand this show and to get the conversation out there and invite more people to be a part of it. But as of right now, just one caller in the queue. So anybody else, please feel free to call in. But I think we'll go ahead and we'll bring that first caller on, and then we'll just sort of roll from there. So getting into the topic, again, let's aim towards the topic of death, and then we'll segue ourselves towards the topic of sex, and then we'll see where it goes from there. So the first caller is caller from area code 541, and we'll bring them onto the air from here. So caller from area code 541, if you're ready, bring you on to Paradigm Shift Radio. Here we go.
Hi, Brendon.
Hello. Hello.
It's
Hello,
Tamara.
caller. Hey, Tamara. Welcome back. Oh, and she dropped. Well, that was a nice, quick visit there. I'm sure we'll hear from her
death
again.
comes from all angles.
Oh, my goodness.
Death of a phone call. It's everywhere.
Interesting observation in itself, too. So, okay, all right. Well, I was hoping to be able to just get somebody else's ideas on that. But, Michael, I'm sure, what else? Okay, she's calling back. All right, okay, we're good. Of course. All right, so, Tamara, bringing you back onto the air. Obviously, she can hear us, so... Trying this again. There we go. Hello?
Hi.
You still with us? You're back.
Yeah, I accidentally hit the button.
And resurrection. So death and resurrection all in the same conversation.
Oh, my goodness. Well, it's an interesting topic for me, and I don't like to shy away from anything. But my stepdad just died. That's why I'm in Utah, actually. So it's pretty relevant right now. it was really strange coming back to this house after so many years and feeling that energy. And I don't think that they ever leave. I really don't. Mm-hmm. The energy was different, though, from when I had interacted with him in life. And it was more positive. It was like, okay, he'd been in pain for a long time. And it was like he was released and he was protective of the house now. That was a strange feeling. Oh, my goodness. And I've had very many experiences with death because my sister died when I was like 8, and she was 6. She had Down syndrome. And right before her death, she had been the March of Dimes poster child and been in a parade and stuff. So that was pretty cool for her. And, you know, I still feel her around as just like my little angel, you know. And like the last thing I heard her say when she was in Primary Children's Hospital getting her operations on her heart, that's what killed her, actually. She ended up having only one wall in her heart, and they tried to rebuild it, and it just she didn't fall through, but she's like, oh, my Tammy, and she was so sweet. And you know, I mean, it's just, when people have been in pain, it's a release. Mm-hmm. It's good. Mm. It's positive, and they still watch you, and they're not gone. I can't believe that so many are close to that energy because it's very strong around me, and maybe because of that early experience. Yeah. There was a funny thing, too, because my grandmother and grandpa, I think they're still watching the house. I, could not sleep this one night, and I kept seeing this photo in my head of my grandmother and my grandfather when they were really young, and they're like, that's how we look now. Again, and my grandmother's like, and I have red hair. I didn't know this, but I went and talked to my mother about it. She always wanted red hair. And right after that, I woke up in the morning. For some reason, I went back in the back, and there was this box, and I wanted to look in it for some reason, and right on top, there was that photo. Whoa. Like, okay, this is real.
Yeah.
So, anyway, a positive view of it. Go on.
There's, I think what you just said there, like a positive view on death, I think that's something that if you can, a lot of people have trouble seeing that, but if you can see it, if you can see that positivity within death, and I think a big part of that for me has just been sort of approaching death from like what for me feels like a logical perspective, but of the idea that incorporates the concept of be it soul or be it whatever, but the idea that like, yes, beyond death, like it's the whole like we're a spiritual being in a human body. So therefore, what is our relationship to the body? And one of the best metaphors that I've heard for death is this idea that it's like taking off a tight boot. And to me, that just made so much sense because you know that feeling where it's a release, and it's very interesting because if people want to call in and talk about this, like I'm open to it, but experiences with DMT and everything like that. From my own personal experience, like and other things, it's this idea that like a DMT experience is like experiencing death without dying, and having seen that experience, it is this like you're going through a portal, you're going through a wormhole, and you're actually entering into like another realm. And as sci-fi as that sounds, that's like me trying to use my words to explain the ineffable, and it's so much more to that too. But that's just a couple thoughts. If anybody wants to, go ahead. I will say. Yeah. Sorry, I was just going to say we do have another caller that we can bring on. So just a couple points, and then we'll bring that next caller on. So we'll go ahead though.
So I think that the thing to also remember is that we do have all these really profound psychological and metaphysical ways of engaging and looking at death, but I think too we have to address that there are fears surrounding death, and it's okay to have those fears. And I think sometimes we do the bypassing because it is a beautiful experience of release and surrender. But at the same time, the body is going to go through these very profound changes. And having sat with family members that I've had to see go through that process, it's a struggle, but it is a powerful transformation. It's like when the butterfly comes out of the cocoon. And I think we have to acknowledge that the body itself is decaying. And I think we do a lot of talking around it, but the truth is everything dies. Relationships end, this show will eventually end, but we will cease to exist in our current form. And I think when we start to sit with that as an idea and we start to look at what our reactions are to that idea, we can do the deeper work of coming to an understanding of what death actually is. And when we can embrace that, it becomes a beautiful thing and not something that terrifies us. I have a friend who was dying of pancreatic cancer, and he's this guy who's done all this spirituality and has been doing this work for a very long time. And we asked him, what are your thoughts now that you are given this diagnosis? And he said, death is just like tying your shoe. And it's like coming to that understanding that it's just another thing that you do. It's another part of this experience, and it is wonderful. And I think another thing he said was he's not afraid of death, but he is afraid of dying, because it is a process that we have to go through. I like the Buddhists because they really break it down. There's bullet points on what happens to the body when you start to go through the death march towards the release. And when you start looking at those things, it can bring up fears, and it's okay to have those fears, because when you embrace those fears and step into a place of understanding what their message is, you're able to now accept this big mystery. And that makes it a very positive thing. So it's okay to have those doubts and those fears, but it's even better when you're taking those doubts and fears and using them to go deeper into your own spiritual experience.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun.
That was good.
That was good. Sweet. All right. I know Tamara probably has stuff to say. Tamara, we're just gonna open this up to another caller, and we'll just bounce it around a bit more if that's okay. Cool. All right. So there's a person on Skype with the Skype name of Mean. I don't even know how to pronounce it. It could be like Me9 something makeup, MENIN. Something 9-inch nails, me 9-inch nails makeup. That's what it is. So, anyways, all right. So, caller who's got that Skype name, we're gonna bring you on to Paradigm Shift Radio, and we'll go from there. So here we go. Hello, caller. Can you hear us?
Hello. Hi.
Hello, caller. Hi.
Hello.
Caller, welcome to Paradigm Shift Radio. We can hear you. Caller, what is your name? Where are you calling from? And what would you like to bring to the show on the topic?
Hi. My name's Tom. Tom Stone. I'm from the UK, and I just thought I'd bring a slightly different perspective from somebody who hasn't been through a personal death. I have no idea what the feeling is of anyone close to me dying. I've luckily never gone through it. But I do want to mention that I'm not scared of dying or death. I think it's important to keep a sense of curiosity about it and mysticism.
Really good.
I slightly look forward to the surprise of what comes.
That's a great way of looking at it. Yeah.
And because of things like DMT and the Kayakogram, I'm under the impression that the final moments is usually a pleasurable experience in some form. So I just thought I'd say, because I haven't experienced death, so I don't know if my thoughts are warranted about death, but that's how I feel.
I'll ask Tom, like, what are your thoughts on just like the concept of the soul and the idea of like life beyond death sort of thing? Like, if that works into your perception of it.
I guess I'd like to believe that it's an interdimensional thing, and that we transcend or descend according to the choice we make at that time, or our spirit makes at that time, and what is right for us at that time.
Mm-hmm.
But
as
Michael said, I believe you have to acknowledge that we leave our physical body here and acknowledge that your spirit has to go somewhere because energy is undying.
Yeah. There's well, even just what you said there remind me of another idea, but like I like to me it makes more sense of the idea that like death isn't necessarily going somewhere new, it's returning from where we're from, sort of thing. And that's why even just what I was saying, like that familiarity, like when we sort of go through death, like this is my interpretation of it, but I imagine it'd be something like this, where you just go through that moment where you just realize you're like, holy shit, I'm like this crazy like spiritual being of light. Like I forgot. It's so obvious. Like, oh, of course, now I remember. And then there's actually like, from my best guess, I know I have this feeling that in some cases with death, there's actually like this part of the experience is actually like you mentioned this, Tom. Like there's a choice as to like moving on or actually like going back into our physical body and almost going back like just moments before whatever happened that could have resulted in like you being there. It's almost like in a time loop sort of thing, like alternate timeline sort of thing. And basically like many of us have perhaps theoretically already experienced death at numerous times throughout our life, and we literally have like forgotten, because like that's part of like the cycle where like we can actually choose when it is that like we'll make that choice to be like, all right, okay, you know, like I'm an old man on my bed, I've lived a good life, like now I shall leave my body, sort of thing. Like that's just something that's really intrigued me. That's why I'd be curious as to what you guys think of that.
I suppose it's also completely possible that you experience death on an interdimensional level and experienced it during your own timeline, but not during your physical consciousness in the 3D reality, such as deja vu, things like that.
Yeah. Sorry, Tom. I'm just gonna. I think I got extra static on your mic, so I was just gonna mute it, but I'll bring you back on in a second. If that's cool.
No problem.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
No problem. Thank you.
All right, no problem.
Yeah, sounds like
okay,
some
sorry.
machine
Go ahead,
in the
Tamara,
background.
Yeah.
Yes,
no. All the way from the UK, so but I don't mind. That's what But go ahead, Tamara, if you have something to say.
Okay, the Buddhist thing. Okay, that is called, incarnation is called taking on the rope in the Buddhist doctrine. It's like putting a noose around your neck. You are leaving being a light being. You're leaving a place of light and beauty where you feel no pain, and you've made a choice to come down here to learn some lessons or to help or whatever your choice was. But it's taking on something. It's taking on something heavy. You know, and that in their conception, you leave through the crown chakra, directly straight through, and you will remember your past lives, and that's what they try to do. And it's very hard to do if you're in pain. So part of the reason for meditation is to get past things like pain and still be able to concentrate on that one pointed idea. So you come across death suddenly, you can still go into meditation and go through your crown chakra straight through. Otherwise, you end up in these realms of the demons, they say. But that's from the Tibetan Book of the Dead, the Bardo states. Yes.
Yeah, it's the Buddhists. It is interesting, and you know, every different tradition is going to have its different take on death. But the thing I like about Buddhism is that there is a heavy focus on death. And it's because it is one of those topics that people tend to avoid. So there's training. You train to die. You learn how to die through the meditation. And I think when you do that, you start to learn about impermanence, which is much more applicable in our everyday experience, because, you know, we come to things like the end of a relationship, and there's grief and there's suffering, because you go through that same stages of grief when a relationship ends. You go through those same dying processes. Because when I was leaving D.C. to move here, I started to notice all the things I was doing for the last time in D.C. And it was the last time I'm going to do these things as a resident. It's the last time I'm going to be in this house. So that dying experience in D.C. and moving here to Columbia, South Carolina, let me really enjoy all the stuff in D.C. that I had taken for granted. And it was really interesting. I was coming up this escalator that I've come up thousands of times, and I really appreciated that escalator. I came to full awareness of that escalator, and I was so grateful all the time. The escalator has taken me to all the things in my life that I really enjoyed in this one location. So I think when we start to understand that death is a constant, it's around every corner, it's always following us, we are able to fully enjoy every experience. Like, we can really have conversations with the people we love because we don't know how much more time we're guaranteed, you know. So it brings us into presence. So that pain and that suffering that we go through to understand death brings us into presence, which lets us really be more full in our experience. And I think that's more important, is where we start becoming more aware of what we're missing out on, because we're really afraid to engage what's here, because we think we have unlimited time, but we don't,
Yeah, like I think this world would be a very interesting place if like nobody had a fear of death sort of idea. It would just be, I feel the same way, that like similar to I mean, Tom said it, like just like, well, not having the fear of death, like I think I think death like humbles us in a lot of ways, or at least like I think if you've gained a perception of it, that's at least how I feel about it. Like it's humbling to think of death, but like through that process, it's sort of like what Michael was saying, like brings you into the present moment. It's just like, holy crap, like things do end. I got to enjoy this while it's still here, sort of thing.
Right.
And take that however you want to look at it, for anything, because I think everything in this existence is in a process of like coming in and going out, sort of thing.
Right.
It literally is that sine wave, or the wave in general. I mean, death is just the other side of that wave, sort of thing. And I mean, just kind of just opening up this part of the conversation, I was alluding to it earlier, but part of the reason that I fear death is like, even just for my people who I know in my life who have passed on, it is this idea that they're still very much with us, and people can sort of interpret this how they will. But yeah, I'm just super curious. We've had episodes in the past on Paradigm Shift Radio where very specific, like we've talked about like ghosts. That was back during the like Halloween time when we did that episode. But yeah, like just the idea of that possibility of and like intelligences existing in a state where they can still like in some way interact, or we can meet them halfway in the astral realms. That's a whole topic, I love that topic, that you can like meet up with people who have passed on in your dreams in an actual way, opposed to just like you creating it kind of way, but in an actual like soul to soul possibility. But sorry, Tamara, if you had something to say, or whoever.
Yeah, it's the planes, the theories of the planes. Supposedly, the astral is the 4D, okay? And the 5D would be the realms of possibilities, the created realms, the bubble worlds. 6D is supposedly the angels, the light beings, the service beings, the realm of service. That's what they do. They're servants. Isn't that funny? I mean, everybody looks up at angels and they're like, oh, I want to be human. Anyway, but yeah, it's just a different state. It's a vibration. Okay, so you go to 4D, you're vibrating at a higher level. It's like the fan blade. I think I've mentioned that before. You can't see the fan blade when it's moving very fast, but it would still cut your hand. It's still there. If you stick your finger in there, it would hurt. But, I mean, some people can see that realm, some can't, and it's kind of an attunement thing. And it's just like dogs can hear sounds we can't, but it's vibration. It's how fast it is. And it's just a transition.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah, I like the idea of death being just a transition. Yeah, like I can see we're sort of as a collective kind of like narrowing in on this general comprehension of what death is, because I don't think a lot of people think that they can't talk about death because they can't make sense of it.
Right.
I think it's interesting that when you can like try to make sense of it. I'd like to bring Tom back on. We'll just invite him back into the conversation, and then we do have a couple other callers that we can bring on as well. Caller from area code 512, we can bring you on shortly after this. But yeah, like this is just approaching this discussion, like what is death? Like that's really what we're just trying to do here. So we'll bring Tom back on, and just anything he wants to add. So Tom, you're back on there if you want.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I did just want to add something. When you say you're scared of death, are we talking about you're scared of the pain involved in your body dying, or are you scared of what might come after for your spirit? I think it's a massive distinction. I think a lot of people are scared of the pain involved in their body dying and getting older, but people are so unsure about what is next that they tend to kind of just let it sit in the back of their mind until it happens.
Yeah.
You're right. That is a good distinction. Michael, did you have something to add, or?
Yeah, well, it's like if you take for the example of falling asleep, right? Your body goes through a process when it falls asleep, and it's this very unconscious kind of thing. The body knows what to do to fall asleep. It just does it. Just like death, the body already knows what to do. And sleep and death is just a longer sleep. But I think like Tom said, we have to acknowledge the fact that there is going to be some pain in that process. The body gets colder, it loses its functions, the organs begin to shut down, consciousness begins to burn like an ember, the body begins to rattle. It's a very specific process, and it's going to be different for everyone depending on how you die, and that's another unknown, right? So it opens up a whole another level of sometimes what makes us afraid, and we shouldn't be afraid of that thing. And I think we have to first not be afraid to acknowledge our fear, if there is fear there. But then to also be okay with looking at pain as an avenue and as a doorway. Because if someone is suffering, it is through that pain body that they are able to transition into these, higher states of consciousness, this new awareness and new awakening. Roshi Joan Halifax of the Upaya Zen Center, she's one of the big Zen teachers who works specifically with death and dying, talked about some instances where they were using LSD to help terminal patients not be so afraid, because it does open us up to those other levels of reality. But it also helps us to understand the pain that we're going through, because there is pain involved in this process. Even birth, giving birth is a painful process. I don't know because I'm a man, but I've heard from what I've seen and heard from others. The birthing process is bloody. It's tearing. But it's beautiful, and it's all of these things, and it's none of these things. But I think we have to also acknowledge that there is some pain involved, but it's through that pain body that we get to experience this other side of pain, and that's sometimes what we're afraid of. And Tom makes a good point that we are afraid of that pain sometimes, but it's okay to be afraid, and it's okay to talk about it. It's okay to dialogue with it. And like Ram Dass always says, go and sit with someone in a hospice and observe that process. Be present for that process, and it helps you to understand it. When you are in presence of something that phenomenal and that powerful, you get to experience it on some level yourself, because what you're seeing is a reflection of what you'll at one point be going through. So it's transformative to watch the dying process, and it's not. And there are some great documentaries on death and dying, and just explore it. Don't be afraid to look at it. Sometimes we think if we look at this stuff, we're going to call it into our experience, we're going to manifest it, but it's a reality. It's going to happen. It's like we might want to think it doesn't. We can work out as much as we want and do the anti-aging stuff all we want, but it's a reality. At some point, it's going to come, and it's okay to talk about these things. And I think that's why a show like this is great, so that we can talk about it.
For sure. Thanks, Michael. Well, I'm just going to, Tom, I'm going to unmute you if you just want to, because you started asking. Cool. Go ahead.
Yeah, I've lost my place. It's 2:45 in the morning here. So.
Yeah, man, you're a trooper.
But to answer your question finally, for me about death, what is death to me? I think as death can be whatever you want it to be during your life, essentially. Who's to say that when you leave your physical body that your spirit doesn't go exactly where you wanted it to? Because we're here, we don't know. And I think it's important to believe in whatever makes you happy, as that's going to assist you leaving. And that's really what I've got to say about death. It's such a morbid thing to talk about.
Yeah, like it. Thanks, Tom. Thanks. I'm just gonna unmute, or I'm gonna mute you again, and then we're gonna segue back. But if you're sticking around, man, I can bring you back on. But
I'll be here all the thing. I'll be here.
Thanks, man. Tom from the UK, everybody. Thanks. Cool. There's a couple other things that came to mind with death. Michael was just saying, experiencing the other side of pain, and then of course like that in itself is almost a natural segue towards talking about the other side of the possibility of like sex. And then I was just thinking how like I'm pretty sure in the French language like the orgasm is known as the mini death sort of thing. But yeah, it's just
pain is a good segue to sex.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah. There's a couple other ideas that with talking with death I still wanted to be able to flow through, and we'll bring another caller on and we'll see where it goes. But I love the idea of just like how like talking about death opens up to the possibility of reincarnation. And I love the topic of reincarnation. And again, I'm particularly, these ideas, they make sense to me. And one of them is the concept that like between our life, we actually get to like see into the future more or less and pick where we're going to be and sort of like set out a potential blueprint for what we can potentially learn. And then we sort of like choose to play that character and we spawn into the game again. So like the simulation of this life. And what we really are is like the higher daemon. And daemon is kind of like a computer programming term for like an operating system controlling like another program sort of thing. So it's like a level up. And that's what we are. We are the higher daemon, and who we are right now. We're like playing these characters, and even Tamara was saying, like when you get to the process of being able to actually like remember your past lives and stuff like that. I think that's it's just a fascinating topic of conversation, and we'll see where it goes. And we can always loop back and spiral around. That's kind of how it works here. So thanks again to everybody who's tuned in. We have 20 users in the live chat as it is right now. So just about midway through this show, just touching base with you guys, reminding you to please continue to invite your friends to tune in. Just share the link wherever you need to share it. Even if this isn't live, of course, just continue to share it. And, of course, you can always get the opportunity for the shift buttons, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But for now, we'll just bring on another caller. So caller from area code 512, we're going to bring you on to Paradigm Shift Radio, and we'll set this up. I mean, if you'd like to talk about sex, then we can talk about sex. And if we're segueing it back through death, then, we'll just flow with it through there. So caller from area code 512, bringing you on to Paradigm Shift Radio. Here we go. Hello.
Can anyone guess who I am?
Oh, he's back. Hey, Andy.
Gee, it's always that. I have no idea. You know what? I just rather put a gun up my head and see if you guys can still recognize me over the, the EVP session.
I'm not sure what you're referring to. But
I'm talking about me being a ghost, because seriously, when you guys brought that up, oh.
Your ghost?
You really found the man who done this, because I'm not joking. I had 7 people in my life who died very recently, like in the past 20 years. So when it comes to death, like I know cold hard that that thing is like on the inside, like I know it's not the end, but on the outside it looks like a dead cold body. Obviously. The only problem is why you guys ask like about the concept of reincarnation. So, like, what do you guys think about reincarnation? Seriously.
I'm on the Diamond Reincarnation team. We're studying it. I think a lot about it. Oh my gosh. They tell me I'm a reincarnation of Queen CE. The commoner queen. I do remember some odd
wow.
things. Yeah, and I remember Nefer, the beautiful one. And I do believe I know her again. But, oh my gosh, I hate going into too much of that, of who you were or who you think you might be. But that's
the thing, is like, does your identity, how do you remember your identity from the past when, like, all of that disintegrates when you die?
Yes. And if you follow the Buddhist tradition, they say that you can remember it, like I said, by going through the crown chakra. That's what they believe, and they've been studying it for quite a while, so at least somebody is. But
that's what really got me interested, because the thing is I remember 2 of my past lives. Like, I remember that I was once a Viking general. Yes, and like I'm not joking. I'm a real hardcore general of like the Varangian guards with those giant axes on there. And another guy is I'm also the Tibetan yogi that lives in a cave.
I have an interesting hypothesis towards the reincarnation thing. I think we can almost like we can almost remember the past lives of anything. So I think all of us could remember like a past life of being like a king or a queen or something like that. Because it's kind of weird to think that like for when people sort of like actually sort of check in with the idea that they're like oh no like I know my past lives. I was definitely a king in a past life sort of thing. Like that it sort of brings in it sounds like an ego sort of thing coming up to the surface. And so that's why like I personally
it doesn't really matter up to
Andy.
this point, because the thing is anyone can be say that they're a king or a queen in some way, but then does it really matter?
Well, that's what I'm saying.
I
think the fact that anybody can say that is also a truth. I think there's the idea that collectively, like, yes, we have all lived a life as a king or a queen. Like, again, like sort of we're tapping into the higher consciousness sort of thing. We're just the fingertips of like higher consciousness peeking through the water, but we're connected as the hand above. So like what we experience.
Yeah, but like that's the thing is like I personally do have experiences of that, and like I have a family member of mine, my mom, like for example, she actually experiences the afterlife where she had several encounters with ghosts, you know. But like I just can't explain like how in the world do ghosts exist in the first place. Like I thought those guys supposed to be once they pass on they disintegrate. And eventually their information somewhere will find them back together in a different place.
Well, going back to the Tibetan doctrine again, if they don't recognize their guide who comes to help them to get to the next plane, within 3 days, they're stuck until someone else decides to help them. So that's how we get ghosts. But I also think it's almost like a VHS recording or a DVD recording sometimes when there has been a lot of pain in an area. Because, okay, some of these ghost appearances, they do exactly the same thing every time. That is not a ghost. That's a recording. It's an impression from great emotion. Okay? When they tell you how to create with your mental powers in magical disciplines, it is with emotion, okay? So an imprint can be created in the ethers by anything that has a great emotive element to it, and it takes a while for that to kind of dissipate in that way, yes. But for an entity, no, you don't dissipate unless you decide to be unmade. You know, that's a pretty big choice.
Like, I mean, like real intelligent spirits that, when you watch like ghost adventures, like ghost hunters, they like some of them would respond to you like as though you're responding to a person.
Yeah.
While others are like residual energies, like they're just like emotions left over by the person only. But there are some ghosts out there that can respond to you like as though you're like really talking to a person, and that does scare me a little bit.
Yeah, there's been assaults caught on video. That's
from
been
ghosts?
odd. I didn't know that. Yeah, that they could leave bloody marks. They got it on video happening even on one of those ghost programs. I was like, what? And then they left the house.
It's pretty speculative of that if it's on like a program. But yeah.
Yeah, you have to think about that. But wow,
when it comes to ghosts, like most of the Tibetan monks that I have learned to speak with, they told me like when you talk to a ghost, just treat them like humans, you know. Some of them can't move on. Think of them like human beings that are just a little bit crazy, but they haven't passed on. That's what they always say. I think
a good way to sort of understand what the perception of from the ghost's point of view is sort of think of like what your memory is of being in a dream where you weren't lucid, where you were just totally caught up in the dream. Because I think sometimes it's like that for a ghost, where they're like maybe in a situation where they may not even realize that they're actually dead, and they're like sort of like to them it feels like they're just like in a dream, and then they're just like there for a while. I don't know. I'm not exactly sure.
Yeah, it's been their guide.
But like I mean, like some of them were so aggressive that I like, for example, in my case of my mom, like if. Like she talked to this she tried to like tell this ghost to leave her alone when she was sleeping, but somehow that 10-year-old girl who somehow died a long time ago came back, jumped on her belly. She got so mad she threw a pillow at that ghost, and next thing you know, it threw it right back, and she got so upset. I mean, like, seriously, is that how ghosts usually treat regular humans sometimes? Like, they just like to play like that or something?
Yeah.
How? Well,
yeah,
I mean, that's
so.
because, I mean, you know, keeping within this bracket of like realms of the taboo, like that's like you start getting into this idea of like demonology and possession and stuff like that. Michael, I know,
yeah.
you're a witch. You can tell us something about. You can tell us something.
You know, if it comes to demons, dude, Michael,
aren't you a self-proclaimed witch?
See a demon,
yeah.
bring him to me, man. Because seriously, I might be a parapsychologist, and someday I'm going to come face to face with those guys. They're ridiculous.
Okay.
I'm not joking.
Yeah.
I've dealt with psychopaths in my mental asylums, and they aren't as scary as ghosts.
Yeah, I mean, well, I've studied witchcraft and I've studied demonology for quite some time, and I've done exorcisms and I've witnessed exorcisms through various different traditions, and I've spoken to shamans and in different aspects. And there are different levels when you're looking at things like demonology and demons. There are those beings that are considered the divine demonic, and those are what we consider the fallen, those angels that have fallen from grace, or however you want to compartmentalize them. And then there are the things that we create. There are our self-created demons. And the best way to look at things like possession is if you look at addiction, and this is another taboo topic. When you look at things like addiction, it is, in essence, the definition of possession. You have an entity that enters the body and really just starts taking control. And a lot of times we will do this with spirituality. And there are things like spiritual addiction. We become addicted to the concepts, and we become addicted to the other levels of illusion that we break into through using hallucinogenics and psychedelics. So we really have to be careful what we're inviting into our experience. And when we're dealing with entity, things like the demonic, it requires us to have a respect for that space, because if we're acknowledging the fact that there are angels and there are light beings, we have to also acknowledge that there are dark entities and those beings that don't necessarily have our highest intent in mind, because it's the balance. You can't have Archangel Michael without having Lucifer be on the same table. So when you're acknowledging one level,
that's what scares me the most. Like, seriously, who are these so-called fallen angels? Like, where do they come from?
Well, they're the supposedly, I mean, there's a lot of different theories on who they are and what they are, but they are the legion that decided to follow Lucifer. So he revolted against heaven, and they all, took a vacation down here with the rest of us. But there's also theory that they are the ones who also helped us to evolve. So I have friends who are what they call demonolators. So they worship demons. And I have other friends who are Luciferians. I have other friends who are Satanists. And what I found is it doesn't necessarily make them right or wrong. It's just a different way of encapsulating energy. So it all really comes down to what your perspective is of these energies, and that's at the level to which they will also have control and, dominion over you. So we have to really be careful of how we're intersecting with those darker forces, because those things do exist, because they exist within us too. If we go out and start shooting up heroin, we're inviting in something that's pretty lethal, pretty dangerous into our experience. And we can do that easily within the spiritual dynamic as well. So it's something we have to consider, because it's also a reflection of who we are. Demons are also a reflection of our own sense of greed, our own sense of lust, our own sense of sloth, our own sense of these heavier negative elements of who we are. Those are also who we are, but it's also these beings. And sometimes we need a way to understand this stuff. So we'll put it outside of ourselves into these entities. So it helps us to understand those different aspects of who we are.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I guess when you talked about when you talked about demons, I guess what you're basically saying there they almost like represents like the deepest aspect of ourselves, but somehow their intent wasn't pretty. So that's how, bam, like it's like a poison in the soul of the water.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like that's that. Or just go ahead, Andy, if you're.
Yeah, like because seriously, I've encountered a bunch of demons, and I'm personally a demon myself when I was a young child. So trust me, when you have a chance to meet me, you don't want to play around with me, man. Like that's the problem. That's why I need to ask like about demonology a little bit, so I can get to know like that inner demon that so many people talked about. Because like I've been raised Christian and all of this stuff, but like I never had a chance to actually know what can you do with that force, you know?
Michael, if you still have
those are volatile stuff, but you can't go fight it. It's like you're fighting a whole army of those guys. They just don't die.
Well, not necessarily. What happens is when you come face to face with those darker elements, and when we talk about, when we study witchcraft and even some other traditions, we talk about doing shadow work. And shadow work is coming to the edge of our own experience and looking at those things about ourselves that we don't necessarily like. So it's examining my own greed, examining my own desire to cause harm. It's these things within myself that need exploration but also acceptance. And the idea with doing exorcism is you're essentially taking this entity and reminding it of its light. So I use the example again of someone who's going through addiction. It's taking this addict and this person who's lost sight of their light and showing them that they do have value once again, so they can transform to the opening. Because with all things dark, there is light. With all things light, there is dark. So the idea is you turn it inside out by going through that point of light that still exists within that entity.
Oh, I guess like what you mean is like somehow Lucifer is just another little copy or a symmetry of what we call the divine light or the God.
Well, both Lucifer and Christ are both called the morning star.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Look
like
at
they're just two polar opposites of the same consciousness.
So when Christ was in the Garden of Gethsemane and he's having that battle with Lucifer, it's actually him having this discussion with himself and his darker parts of self, right? So it's me coming into
That's
confrontation.
That's what I was thinking also.
There you have it.
Oh my gosh.
Heavy
I love
stuff. We're getting the deep waters now.
You know, that's what I was I was about to bring up the concept of sex too, but then it's like, okay, I guess when you talk about demons, you already conquered one of my darkest demons is sex, because I'm a Scorpio, so that demon is ridiculous.
Scorpio, of course.
Scorpios are known
I know
for
a lot
being
of
very
Scorpios.
sexual, and the only reason I know that is because
I'm a
it's
Scorpio.
the lyrics in a
I'm
Beastie
the one
Boys
who
song.
hosted the show yesterday, last night, and guess you guys didn't have a chance to see it.
Not yet. Yeah,
Dang.
we'll check that in the Paradigm Shift global discussion group for people. Yeah. But yeah, we can. I know we're about halfway through the show right now, so we can segue this. If you guys, whatever you guys want to talk about. I mean, the demonology thing is super interesting to me too, because from in my mind, I'm just like, like what, like seriously, because I don't know either. But like, what actual real stuff is possible? Like we see. I think of movies like Constantine, which interestingly enough, Keanu Reeves is in, aka Neo, is in that movie, and he's like, what is he doing? He's like conquering these demons, and they're like, and it's also the inner demons in himself, which is like the reflection of us as the viewers. So there's ideas within that movie, but again, like I've heard stories of like, there's one story I heard from a lady, and she sounded like super honest about it, and it was basically about like this like shape shifting sort of beast that was like a shadow creature that she saw like this one time like out and about outside somewhere. And she said, like, like freaked her out, and she didn't believe that she saw it either. But yeah, like, so I don't know, man. Like, there's like, even if Bigfoot's out there, and if UFOs are out there, and if this reality is a lot crazier than we realize it is, what else is out there, sort of thing. And I think a lot of it could sort of be explained from like the multidimensional perspective, sort of thing. Because I think everything is multidimensional off the start. But then you also get into this idea of like, people encountering entities within other DMT type experience, and again, like the DMT type experience is parallel to death, is parallel to the dream realm. So we're constantly going like between like these different realms, even if it is like just sleep and stuff like that. But yeah, no, those are just that was just a couple thoughts of Andy or whoever wanted to bounce something.
Well, I guess like some of you guys read the Tibetan Book of the Dead, because I personally read that book all the time, you know, especially like when there's a person who died in my house.
Actually, sorry, I'll just jump back in because I know the Tibetan Book of the Dead is a very good read. I haven't checked it thoroughly myself.
I actually own a copy of it at home, and in fact, it's like ridiculously graphic.
Yeah, and that's
like I'm talking about demons with like 10 arms and with swords and bloody skulls on there, and imagine try to like imagine how the dead would try to see through that demon and say, oh, that's just another picture of my good side, which is the Buddha guy. So I just like, oh well, get myself saved, and lo and behold, I'm back in enlightenment. That is, I can just imagine how hard that is going to be if you ever have to encounter your demons. Like this morning, I had just had 2 or 3 lucid dreams in a row, and I just encountered a demon trying to chase me down a pathway that was like a bunch of dead ends, and they threw me all over the place. They throw me across the wall, and I was dead for good.
Did you die in your dream? Did you die in your dream?
I was dying in my dream.
Yeah, that happens sometimes, which is like super
I was
deep.
Like, oh my God.
You don't have to worry about dying in your dream. You just have to worry if you cross a river. If you actually die in a dream, it's not death.
No, it's like your mind, but yeah.
Yeah, but when you see yourself crossing a river, or especially in a boat, well, maybe with a ferryman, then worry.
Unless you die in real life while you're dreaming, and then you can't.
Oh man.
Oh my gosh.
That one is the most painless death I ever heard, man. Because seriously, there is no way, like I would feel any pain if someone were to kill me right at the spot.
Well, I mean that's that's like some people do die that way, where they just die in their sleep and everything like that.
There is. In fact, I found a lot of Tibetan monks, they do that. They just pass through.
Just go into a deep meditation.
There's one Shaolin monk that I actually read on Facebook, where like he asked this one tourist guy. He said, "Have you seen people die before, right?" And he said, "Yeah." And then what about it? He's like, "Have you ever seen a person die on their headstands?" He said, "What the hell are you talking about?" He did a headstand like a Shaolin monk, and he just died on that stance. People try to pick up his body, but the problem is it won't lift off the ground because it was ridiculously heavy. And then that person's like, all right, can you just stop that lousy trick of yours? And that's when the body just literally fell down on its own.
That's interesting. Yeah. Oh man, again, like there's still a lot I know we can talk about on the topic of death. But one thing I was going to say, just to sort of, and then we'll move into the sex conversation. But I was going to say on the topic of death, referencing the Tibetan Book of the Dead, there's also like the movie Enter the Void, which I would highly recommend, which in itself like has a lot of reference and inspiration from the Tibetan Book of the Dead. But yeah, Enter the Void, just I'm sure you can find it on the internet for those who haven't seen it. I know a lot of people have, but yeah, like even in that scene, it's in the movie, the very like first 5 minutes, like it's like the only movie to do a visual first person perspective of a DMT experience, and then from there it goes through the story of like this guy in Tokyo who like dies and it's death, like from the first person perspective. Very, very, very unique movie, very beautiful. I would recommend checking that out. But yeah, so we still have a couple other people in the queue. Actually, we still have Tom still Tom is still on the queue from the UK, and we also have Bonnie, who's been waiting patiently. So we can bring on Bonnie, and Tom will be able to bring you on if just as the conversation unfolds, if you're still around. And just before I bring Bonnie on, just of course reminding and inviting people that they can get in the weekly draw for the free shift buttons, and of course you can do that by sending a message to facebook.com/ParadigmShiftRadio and just let us know that you want to be entered into the draw. And also you can order your buttons at any time at ParadigmShiftCentral.com/buttons and use the promo code PSR to get extra buttons on that. And thank you everybody for ordering their buttons. It does support the production of more buttons, which are help used to alter the timeline and unplug people from the Matrix. That's what the buttons are for, so you can get your own. And try it out for yourself and create those experiences and all that awesome shifty stuff. So, shifters of the world, unite. All right, so with that said, I'm going to bring on Bonnie, and we'll see where the conversation opens up from there. So, Bonnie, we're going to bring you on to the air. Here we go. Hello, Bonnie. Can you hear us?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hey, Bonnie.
Hey, what's up? Great conversation tonight. Let's see. What I wanted to say was about death, but if we're going to segue, then I can ask a question about sacred sex, I guess, instead.
Yeah, I think it was interesting because I was just like mentally preparing myself. I'm just like, all right, well, what can we talk about sex? And one of the things I'm just like, evidently by whatever angles we're coming from it, I think all of us on this discussion will be able to agree that sex is like this sacred ritual, or at least that's the way like it could potentially be looked.
Oh yeah.
It has to be learned.
Yeah.
And it's also
I know Bonnie, because Bonnie, you just said sacred sex, so like already right off the bat, like that's kind of the angle that I would advise going into this, because it's a lot of people think sex is just like something that you just sort of nonchalantly do, whereas go ahead. I know Bonnie, I'll just open it up to you first.
Bonnie.
Let's see. Yeah, so I had this whole idea to come on here and tell you guys about this gift of a dream I had where I got to experience death from like several different perspectives, and like had my guiding angel there who in my dream was projected as philosophical. I'm sure a lot of you guys know him. He was like my guide in my dream.
He's fun.
And it was
really
amazing. But anyway, I got some good insight about kind of like death and all this stuff. But okay, so we're talking about sacred sex, I guess.
Well, death is related to sex. It's okay. Remember it.
Yeah, I mean, let's see. Now I'm trying to like not tell that story and like intermix these two concepts, and maybe I should just be a listener again. Because I mean, death is interesting. Sex is interesting. Sacred sex is interesting to me. I think that it's like more easily talked about than practiced. What about sex and dreams? Did we talk about that yet already? Like in other shows? Like I'm kind of curious about that.
No.
When we talk about demons and things like that, you get like at one point, I think it's Tom had mentioned demons. Like when you're coming face to face with a demon, like. What about when you're having dreams or like sexual dreams? Like, do you ever wonder if you could be having a sexual encounter with like maybe some kind of demonic energy, or what is going on there?
Demon dream sex? Yeah.
Like,
that's a popular topic.
Is that?
What's possible?
Radio.
Those things are possible. The incubi and the succubi are two demons that are associated with sex, either taking semen from men or taking eggs from women or impregnating women. So there are those concepts with that's also linked into the whole ET thought. But another thing with sex to consider too is not all sex is sacred, but all actions are sacred. So we can look at sex as something that is also, because when we start talking about sex as only being a sacred act, it cuts out the reality that sex isn't always sacred. We have to embrace that side of it as well and be okay with talking about those things, because I think if we exclude those parts of the experience, it means that the mundane isn't sacred, because the mundane is also very, very sacred, because it's the reality of which most of us live. Not all of us are going to engage in tantric intercourse. A lot of people probably watch porn and masturbate. And is that a sacred act? And we have to look at all acts of sex and looking at where all acts intersect with the sacred. It's people who go through abuse that through that abuse go on to start foundations to help others who are also dealing with abuse. So it's not necessarily that act that was sacred, but it's what happened beyond the act. So we have to be able to look at all aspects of these things, and that's what makes them taboo, because when we start talking about the non-sacred stuff, that's when stuff starts getting more, people start to do the avoidance talk, and we don't necessarily want to talk about those things, but that's what makes it taboo, is that it's not always sacred. Sometimes it is just masturbating to porn, but that can also be sacred, depending on who you are. So it's not right or wrong. It's just allowing us to embrace the sacred, even in those things that may not be considered sacred by others.
We talked about that on What is Love. I remember the global. No, I won't say it.
Oh yeah, that global idea is a way to masturbate.
Yeah.
For world peace.
For world peace, yes.
That's like a happening in itself. Like when I was writing down my notes, I the first three things I wrote down was death, sex, and magic. And I think like magic in itself is like a taboo thing. Even it's even just like. I just think of like the hysterical way of like how some people respond to Harry Potter in today's modern society. Just like it's like, oh, it's demonology and stuff like that. But there is like, and just tying this within the immediate idea of like within the ejaculation, the orgasm itself, which again like we're playing in the same ballpark of like the death conversation still, because like again like the idea that like I don't know. I don't think. Yes, the death, like the orgasm is an amazing experience. I don't know if it like actually releases DMT. I would say that it doesn't from a scientific point of view. So in that sense, it's like not like the exact same experience. But yes, it's still like an amazing. It is an amazing experience, and it's very interesting because it seems. I remember at one point when I was like young and stuff like that, my logic was like. The orgasm is the best experience that we as humans can experience. Therefore, it must be the reason we're alive. Like I was just like, it's like that. I'm pretty sure we're just here to like have sex and reproduce. Like I'm pretty sure that like it just made sense. But it's like the varying degrees of how you can experience the orgasm that sort of like open you up to like new realms of being sort of thing. Because I think kind of what Michael was saying, a lot of people. And this is a very interesting and important discussion, especially for males hearing this. A lot of people are in this habit where they just like masturbate all the time. But there's the whole idea of like the cultivating of male sexual energy and being able to simply transform that, the internal alchemy, like and use it as creative processes for other things within our lives. And I know I've mentioned this on the show like numerous times, but that's because like I think it's something worth reiterating, because I don't think it's something that we're taught in school. Because like another thing, I'll just set this up and pass it on. Another thing, in my notes I wrote down the idea like nutrition was taboo, or just like health was taboo, and it was the idea that within schools we wouldn't necessarily be able to teach our children about things like energy healing or just like working with practical magic or things like that. Because it is a taboo, and that's like a cultural thing, and that's almost like the root of our ignorance as to like why we're stuck in these like bad habits, these bad sexual habits, because we're not being traditionally educated about sex from an almost spiritual perspective, if you want to think about it that way, within our common education systems or whatever. Like I wish that information, like there's good books out there by Mantak Chia. I'll post a link up for those another time. But sorry, I'll just pass it off, and everybody wants to jump in. Mike.
Yeah, I think too, like when we look at sex, when we look at sex is sacred, but we also have to go outside that spectrum and take it out of not just saying that conception is the only sacred element to sex, because when we look at same-sex intercourse, conception is not part of that, but it is still an act that becomes an expression of love between two individuals. But sex can also be used as a weapon. Sex can also be used as a tool of manipulation. So there are different levels that sex encompasses, and we have to be able to look at all of those things. So the idea is when you're exploring sex on your own to look at how sex intersects with your life, and what is sex offering you, but what are you offering to others through the act of sex. And in the witchcraft tradition that I studied, sex is a big part of that tradition because we move through sex. We embody life and spirituality through sex. It is our root chakra. It is the connection to the world beneath us. It is how we express ourselves. It's who we are. But there are people who, of course, will manipulate that energy. There are people who will take advantage of that energy. So it's important for each of us to understand what our individual relationship is to it. And yeah, it's important to if you're spilling the seed everywhere, it may be you start looking at where addictions start to intersect with sex. So it's important. I mean, take these topics that we're talking about tonight and really take them beyond just the conversation we're having here, because these are the heavy stuff that gets avoided. But sex is a beautiful thing, and it's a messy thing, and it's a dirty thing, and it's a beautiful thing, and it's all of these things. So I think that's all I have to say on sex.
So maybe it would be interesting to hear like what exactly we mean when we say sacred sex, because I mean, for example, like I could be thinking in my head like this is like I could put that intention out there that that's what I want, but maybe like unless I come to terms or a discussion with the other person and they're not on that level, maybe that's not what they're thinking. Maybe they have a whole different intention for it. Like what makes it the sacred sex? Is it like that recognition that we're honoring our higher selves by doing this, or where's the transition? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think for sex to be sacred, it's a two-person, at least a two-person like thing where there's an agreement, and it's like it's like a conversation in a lot of ways, and it's a very energetic conversation, and that's again part of the education behind sex, and this is something that thanks to the internet has been getting around, and people are becoming more conscious of it, but of the obvious fact that when you have sex with a person, it's like a super intimate thing, and there's actually this huge exchange of energy, and that's where if you're like having sex with somebody who is like just and I hate to say it this way, but like like very like negative or whatever, then there is the idea that like through sex, yes, that like that energy, there's that yin yang, it's like a transfer, and that's even just like from like sort of a just understanding of ways. It is this idea that like the male is like the cooling energy, and the female is the cooling energy, and the male is the warming energy, or it's probably, some people probably tell you it's the other way around. But yeah, it's like this dyadic cyclone. It's like the yin and yang, the union sort of thing. So there's this energy like cycle that is literally created. That's just something that I think, in terms of sex, like we need to definitely keep in mind. But yeah, if anybody wants to jump in.
I was just saying that it has to do with energy. You could be at a higher frequency because you've cleaned your body of toxins than your partner, and your partner might lower your energy because it's kind of like you're joining those two frequencies and becoming one sine wave, as you like to say. And if your energies are not close to the same frequency, you have to lower yourself to get to theirs, or they have to raise you. Basically, it's difficult. It can be draining. Whereas if you're at the same vibratory frequency, then it raises both. It combines and raises.
Yeah.
So
love is a very healing thing. It can be a very empowering thing when approached intelligently. It can be a very empowering thing for both people. But yeah, of course, like it's something that just, I think respect is the word that comes to mind. Just always respect the process of like the sexual act and the sexual energy itself, how we're using it, and to not always be giving into it, sort of thing, like to make the harder choice, whatever that is, whatever that means to you, just in terms of not thinking with your heart, not just like with like your root chakra, so to speak. So that balance. Yeah. I don't know. Michael or anyone, feel free to jump in.
Yeah, I think you should bring, because like he's kind of pinging me offline, but bring Tom on, because I think he has some interesting perspectives on sex.
Let's do that. So we'll bring Tom on, and then we actually do have another caller from area code 407, and we'll just go from there. So we did have Andy. Andy looked like he dropped. I had muted him just temporarily, but if he's around, he can call in again. So we'll bring Tom on for now. So Tom, if you're ready, bring you back on.
Hello.
Yo.
Hi, guys.
Back.
Hey, I'd like to raise a few points. Firstly, somebody asked about boys dreaming about sex. Boys tend to not dream about sex because it's a messy experience when you wake up in the morning. Or try not to think about sex. I certainly don't think about sex. My second point is, I think in this conversation about sex, we've put too much credence on the fact that we've put too much credence on sex as a spiritual act and forgotten that as we're all human and we all have imperfections, we all use sex for selfish acts in one way or another. I myself personally use it as a massive empowering tool. And you were talking about porn. I actually do porn, gay porn, and I find it massively empowering and massively confidence building. Because I struggle with social situations, I struggle with relationships, I struggle with having sex and love, I struggle with that kind of situation. So for me, doing it that way is a way of making myself feel not loved but attractive. I think that's something we all, in one way or another, want. And it's not just a spiritual thing. Sex is a game. We all play. It's a fun thing that we love. We all love it, surely. I think everyone loves it, and we do it for fun, not just to make babies and to share a connection. We do it because we're bored. We do it for stress relief. We do it because something on the radio has aroused us. We do it for all manner of reasons. And let's not take away from the fact that it's our very basic primal instinct to have sex. I mean, if I keep rabbits, and if you look at those, I can't even put my male and female rabbit out on the floor without them within 30 seconds jumping straight to it. It's an instinct thing, and not many people actually think about the ramifications of sex until after. I think that's important to remember. If we're talking about sex as a taboo, of course.
Yeah. That's great.
Michael, did you want to, or whoever want to respond?
I'm getting distracted by Mars Kira from Toronto.
Okay. Tom, I'm just going to mute you again, but I'll bring you back on in a second. Okay, thanks, man. No, I was some good observations, some good angles there from Tom. Thanks, Tom. Whoever else, just feel free.
I'm a little curious how we would know in a dream if this is just like if you know, I know you said that you don't have sex dreams, but I don't know. Me and a lot of my girlfriends have sex dreams. I thought that's what Tom had said. I mean, I have quite a few sex dreams, and I guess I'm wondering, like, how am I supposed to know whether this is some kind of demonic figure or whether it's just, you know, a projection of my brain, myself, just projecting, like, you know, imagining this person that, you know, I obviously don't know in real life, so maybe I'm, like, creating it, you know, or, like, how would I know whether I should be worried about this? You know what I mean? Does that make sense, Michael, who was kind of answering?
Yeah. Well, the idea with that is that, you know, first off, you want to feel what you're experiencing outside of the situation. So like in real life, right, if someone were rubbing up on you that you didn't want to rub up on you, like if you're dancing in a club, right, and this person's grinding on you and it's like they're invading your space, it's the same thing with spiritual energy. When someone's spiritually invading us, it's the same kind of sensations. If I'm waking up with grief and anger and the sensation that I've been depowered, because sometimes it's through that act of taking. So you look at like rape, for instance. It's an act of forcibly taking something from somebody else. And in essence, that's what that is. It's this vampiric energy that's moved into your space and it's taking from you. So when you wake up, there's the same sensations as if though I've lost something and not gained something. So when sex is mutual and consensual, it becomes this thing that we move into in unison. So there is an empowerment that happens through there, right? So when you're feeling depowered by the experience, something's been taken from you. It's like if your partner wants to have sex and you don't, and then you reluctantly go into that, and like Skull said earlier, it becomes a one-sided thing. I remember one time when I was dating this person who was involved in magic, and we were having sex, and this person was like doing sex magic at the same time, and I was like, "Are you doing a spell?" And it's like I wasn't invited to do the spell too, and it's like he was using that act as a mechanism to work something that had nothing to do with me. So it devalued me within that experience. So I lost something from that because I was not valued enough to be brought into the fullness of that experience. So it's that sense of feeling lost, So if your dreams are making you feel that, you might want to work on shielding and guarding and taking a look at, what may be happening in there, throwing some salt or doing whatever it takes.
Interesting. Yeah, no, I practice Reiki, so that helps with the protection thing. I have a lot of those symbols and everything. And it does normally seem like a positive experience. I guess that's why I kind of was wondering if maybe this is bad. I don't know.
Yeah, it's rare to actually have a demonic experience in your sleep in that way. To have something be violent that way. Those things are actually pretty rare. To have like an incubi or succubi attack you in that mechanism, or even to have the divine demonic, these entities that come down, like you see in the movie The Rite, where you have Lucifer and Baal and these other demons that come to elicit these grand things, and they're throwing stuff around. Those are rare. It's the personal demon, so it could be my addiction to sex. That is the demon that I'm working through. And if I have issues with sex, and it's those issues that show up in my life, and those become the personal demons we have to work through. But if it's a great thing, you're having fun with it, and don't stop it. keep having those great sex dreams.
I mean, I feel like I've experienced both though, but the negative ones were before I got into the protection thing. So interesting. Well, thanks for.
Yeah.
Thanks, Michael. Well, right now, just checking in with everyone. Thank you, everyone, of course. That we only got about less than 30 minutes left in the show, and we do have another caller who's in the queue, caller from area code 407. So we'll bring them on, and we'll just continue to open and flow with this conversation. So caller from area code, Bonnie, I think is. I don't know if I'm just getting feedback from someone extra fuzziness. It might be Bonnie. Bonnie, I'm just going to mute you for a second, if you don't mind. Yeah, it was. Okay, so caller from area code 407. We are going to bring you on to Paradigm Shift Radio. Here we go.
Hey, what's
Hello.
up? This is Aaron.
This is Aaron again. Perfect. Cool,
yeah,
man.
what's up? From Orlando. Interesting conversation, and I was listening to Tom when he came on, and it's funny because I'm going to be very not too explicit, but very forthcoming in what I'm about to say. I'm a gay man, and I've been single and celibate for 5 years. And when that means celibate, that means no sex with anybody, just sort of doing my own thing until, for me, the first time that I did have sex with my first love, it was a 13-hour experience, and it was a tantric sort of experience. There wasn't any release until that last bit, and it was orgasmic on different levels it was something that was new to us, but it was something for the first time experiencing that union between us two on that level was something that I will never forget, and it was something that I definitely took with me with whoever my other partners were. I think that when it comes to that, though, a lot of people, especially nowadays, sex is a routine thing. It's like, okay, you meet this person at a bar, or you meet this other person, and it's like, okay, hey, you want to go chill? You want to go back to my place? Cool, we'll do our thing, and that's it. And Skull, you mentioned this earlier. There is a energy union between a person, and sometimes when that negative energy is in another person that you might not have seen because you just met them either that night or just don't really know them intimately on that level, a lot of that stuff can attach itself to you, and then certain things will happen in your life that you're just like, whoa, where did this kind of come from? I wasn't expecting this, but that sort of energy is now sort of connected yourself because you've been open to that point to let a lot of things happen. So I personally guard myself against certain things like that, and I'm very selective in who it's a screening process, like I value my energy enough to know that I am a worthy person enough for myself, and I value my energy enough to where you're going to have to go through a process before I just give myself everything to you. I guess mine is not to be given freely. It's just something that you have to work for, and I have to understand on a certain level exactly if you line up with me, because if there's a variance that I see that, we don't connect on that level, then there's it's not necessary for me to give myself to you, because you haven't earned that. That is not something that I feel comfortable with you invading that space. Yet, if that does happen, I'm there for it, and when that person does come, I can say, look, I've been celibate and haven't given myself to this because this is how much I respect my body and respect this. As to where, especially in the gay community, it's very hard to meet people that are just like, you know what, I'm not going to do this. That you have to have certain, for myself, I feel that there should be a standard right in knowing where you stand sexually and what you let in spiritually as well, just for me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Michael, did you want to respond?
Yeah, I think too, because I really like that you brought up that point. Is it Aaron?
Yes.
Yeah, so I like that you brought that up because, I think within the gay community, there is sometimes this stereotype, but sometimes we live out the stereotype that there is promiscuity. And I think what happens a lot of time, and not just in the gay community, but the other communities, is we're all seeking for tangibility. And we live in a place where there's so many distractions and so many things that keep us away from one another that sometimes we feel that the only way we can really get to know someone is to let them fully into our bodies, because we confuse tangibility with sex. We confuse love with sex. And love is not sex. Love is an expression, sex is an expression of love. And we start confusing intimacy with sex, and sometimes people just want to go into that place of let's spill our fluids everywhere. And intimacy can be cuddling, intimacy can be talking, and intimacy can be all these things. But I think it's really good to bring up that point that we confuse these other things that we're seeking with sex, and we think that sex is the only way to get tangibility, and it's not. And it really devalues sex. It really does. It means that sex doesn't have value anymore, because sex only takes a relationship so far. And eventually, sex gets boring, or sex begins to leave the relationship. And if you don't have anything beyond sex, then there's nothing to hold that house together.
Exactly. So
right on.
I like that. That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, like obviously, no doubt, there's a lot to talk about in terms of sex, and again, kind of, I think, evidently, if you're someone listening to the show, then I would just encourage you to, yes, bring more consciousness into how you perceive sex. As for myself, like, I think I always think of like the Avatar movie, when they like do it in the Avatar movie, and I mean, I'm laughing about it, but like, you think of that scene, with the two main characters, and they're like the alien Avatar form, and they're like merging their tails or whatever. I think it's how they did it. Yeah, but it was like so like sacred. It was so like, and especially to the female Avatar character of the Na'vi, like to her, like that, as part of their culture, like that meant like a commitment, that meant like a bonding experience. That's something that, like, for me, I've always sort of like approached. It's similar to like how Aaron and Michael are saying, like, yeah, like really just being mindful with who it is that you're like opening and sharing yourself up with. And it's crazy. Yeah, it's crazy. Like, just because, I mean, we are in the minority compared to a society that is just overrun with like just like the mentality of just like, like getting drunk and like finding someone to have sex with on a Friday night sort of thing. But
exactly.
Which is like a whole, like why is it like that? Why is society like designed that way? Which is, almost a whole conversation in itself. But yeah, I mean, I'll just bounce it off. Anybody else want to just jump in? Go ahead. We got like 20 minutes left.
I gotta go. Aw. Well, I wanted to say one last thing before I go, though. This has been very interesting as far as the levels that it's gone to, and I've really enjoyed your programming every time. And I'm glad that I was a part of it. That's all I wanted to say.
Well, we're always happy to have you back. So thank you for being a part of the tour. And you have to leave now. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, my family needs me.
Okay. All right. Go do what you gotta do. So we'll continue on. So thank you.
Okay.
Thank you again.
I'll listen to the end later. I'll put up the link later. Okay.
All right.
Bye. Hi.
Bye.
Well, bouncing off of what you said, Skull, I think that a lot of the times I think it's mainly impulse, and it's something that again is something that people are prone to do because they do want that excitement, because I mean there is that joy in being able to have that experience with somebody, and even somebody that you don't really know that well, but just that communion, it just feels good. It fills a void for a specific amount of time. It doesn't fill it for an extended amount of time, but it does the job for just that moment. But then after that, it's like, okay, well then I guess I'll leave, and then the door shuts, and it's like, okay, well I guess it was good for that, but where do I stand in that situation? What really did I give away, or what did I lose in that situation, and why don't I feel complete? I think that's the biggest part for me, is that I was just not going to settle for going through that situation anymore, because I it's one of those things, and we are a minority. It definitely is a minority. It's not something that is, but I think that when people say, well, sex is just sex and it's not anything that big, I look at it as a huge thing. I look at it as it can be so much better. And I think that that's the reason why usually if I'm in relationships, they last for a very long time, because we have that connection to where it's just, it doesn't get that boring. It doesn't get that, because there is that connection to where it's just something deeper than just the act. There is everything else attached with that goes with the whole experience, and that's what the fun part about it is, and the growing in that, and getting to know somebody and becoming one with that person in that union, and being able to live and trust with that person. And that's I think what the ultimate goal is, in finding a spouse or a mate to go ahead and to give yourself to, in that essence.
Yeah, I think it's important. It really is. Like, it's important to understand what and we're not saying that if you're going out there and you're having like lots of sex,
not at
lots
all.
of fun, by all means, have it for the rest of us. But
I
think
real.
too that and for me, I found that some of the deepest relationships I had, weren't based on sex. It was these you have so much about someone that you don't know, and when you only explore it through the body, you're only getting one sliver of that person. And then we go back to the whole death thing. So what if that person becomes paralyzed and now they can't have sex? It's like, do you now leave that person because that one sliver of who they are is no longer something that you can manifest in that relationship in that way? So there are 1,000 different ways to explore intimacy and sex, and I think it is fun, and it's messy, and it's beautiful when you can share that. But we have to look at when we are overdoing anything, and the Skulls brought this up before, when we are like masturbating constantly, and you're doing this stuff, it begins to depower these things. It's like you start to lose the value in the act itself, and we start to look at, is that now becoming something that goes beyond the sacred experience? But right or wrong, it's up to everyone to ask these questions. And I don't think they have to have answers, but we have to start asking these heavier questions, because it makes it all this delicious taboo stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
For sure. I'll bring Bonnie back on, and we also got Tom still on. So we'll just open this back up to Bonnie, and then we'll see if Tom has something to add as well. So Bonnie, bringing you back on, unmuting you. Bonnie, do you have anything to add?
Not exactly. I'm enjoying listening.
Okay, cool.
If you want a caller, you can bring them on.
Cool. All right, we'll bring on Tom. Bonnie, I'm just gonna put you back on mute, and Tom, I'm just gonna unmute you. Check in. Hey, Tom. Anything to add?
Yeah. Let's try and remember that sex is supposed to be sexy. Right. And it's let's use it. I mean, to the guy, is it Aaron, who he's been celibate for 5 years?
Yes, sir.
I think that's an amazing achievement for one. And you also said that you had a 13-hour experience. Just big up for you there, right there, mate. That's a hell of an achievement.
Now trust me. Now trust me. It's not like I don't please myself, because I mean that does I have to go to sleep. Like there's some relief that has to happen. I'm just trying to say, just trying to let you know.
Yeah,
that does happen. But I mean, it's just as in just for myself, it's like it is a feat, and it's not easy. Trust me, it's not.
I think it's beautiful that you keep yourself for somebody that you're truly connected with, and that person is truly lucky because of that. But yeah, like you said, you have to sort yourself out. So I think there's two sides to every coin, and there is a very beautiful side to sex, but there is also a very animalistic and primeval side to sex that men especially, maybe more than women, I don't know because I'm not one, men definitely need sex. It's not just a spiritual thing.
I would agree with that,
need orgasms anyway.
I will say this. When I am a very animalistic person in the sexual sense. So again, it's not saying that I'm such a prude to where when this does happen I'm not. Oh, trust me, I do work. So I mean, in that sense, it's like, it is what it is, and I'm a primal sexual being. But again, it's one of those. I'm just one of those people to where I want to be primal with that person I can be primal with, without there being any notion of, oh man, I just did this and this was great, but then this is all it is, and it's not either going to go further, or it's this situation just doesn't deem itself right. Now I've been in situations prior to where there was a threesome situation that was awesome. I mean, it was like 2 guys, it was perfect, no drama, and we just kind of like fell out, and for 2 years it was great, and that was awesome for the time, because we were all comfortable with each other.
I totally agree with the whole threesome thing. Definitely, as long as you guys can all. I mean, it's the more the merrier, right? And not just
as long
in
as
sex,
it's a mutual
but in
thing.
relationship, the more positive energies to go in. That's one extra person's positive energy to make you all harmonize into one, which is brilliant, fantastic, and I wish I could find that. But
so I have a question for Tom.
Yeah, please.
So Tom, like when sex becomes your profession, so if you're working in the porn industry, I have a lot of friends who work in porn, and I'm always curious to ask, when it becomes your profession, how does that change or enhance your relationship to sex?
For me, when I first started, it became very hard for me to get excited for sex, where it was almost as if the porn companies had put a price on me as a sexual object, so it's hard for me to be involved with anybody on a personal level without that money, and I had to take a step back for a few months and regain that. So I think it's important to try and keep it on 2 separate sides of the coin. And when I do have a partner, and I have had partners since I started porn, the sex we have is something completely different to what I do at work. I think the sex I have as a profession is more of a ego boosting kind of thing. It makes me feel like I'm a sexy man, and that I'm wanted, and that because I struggle to get that in a personal, I think that's my go-to. But don't get me wrong, the sex I have with a partner or somebody I care deeply about is completely different, and just in feeling.
I respect your honesty, Tom, to be honest with you, because I can totally relate to what you're saying and totally understand conceptually exactly what you're talking about, and understand where you're coming from in that aspect, and I totally get it. I totally get it.
That's great. I'm glad that you enjoyed I've also enjoyed listening to you. Thank you very much. I'm very tired.
Yeah. No, I appreciate it. Yeah, I appreciate it. All you guys coming on here, sharing this stuff, getting pretty raw here.
I'm gutted that I've only just discovered you at episode 95. To be honest, I'm gonna to go back and spend some time.
Awesome. Yeah.
Paradigm Shift Raw.
Guaranteed, I'll be here every week. I'll be
sure.
there.
Right on, man. Yeah, and of course, I'll just remind people, just on that note, for people looking for the past episodes, you can find those all through ParadigmShiftCentral.com and check out the website there just to explore more inspirational media and awesome stuff. There's just a couple points I was going to add. Tom, do you mind if I mute you? Is that cool?
You carry on, my friend.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, man. Just because we're getting to the end of the episode, and Michael, do you want to lead us through meditation?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, we'll do that. All right, we'll do our meditation. So just with a few minutes left, just trying to think of, because I mean, yeah, like, I respect where you guys are coming from with the sex thing, and not even really to say like devil's advocate, just more so to expand on the topic. I think there's like this huge untapped potential with sex that like a lot of people aren't even really like fully aware of, because it actually like requires like more of like a mental practice and something that actually involves consistency, and it really does have to do with the idea of like cultivating the male sexual energy, from what I was saying, and actually just like being able to like just like transform the sexual experience into like a higher experience, and that's where like, I mean, Tom, you know, some people like, even like Aaron, you guys were sort of saying, you know, like where you just like you masturbate to fall asleep at night and stuff like that, and like this was something that I personally like used to have a habit of back in the day, but that was before I sort of like put together the idea of just how potent the sexual energy is in the first place, and also the idea that like we think that we have like an unlimited like ejaculation supply, but like I think we're actually like tapping into a reserve of like etheric energy that each time we do that, it literally like does become like a little bit weaker. So if we like want to like live longer and like almost tap into like this essence of immortality, so to speak, like you look at like ancient cultures and like Japanese people or something like that, and like that's where, or Chinese and Asian, like this is where like some of that information is coming from, because they were so aware of like the supply of like the seminal fluid and the idea that, and I've mentioned this before, but just again, like if to visualize it, you know, like it starts from the testes, but then that liquid can like lubricate its way up through the spine and like connecting with like the cerebral cortex and the brain and everything, and it's sort of like a lubricant in a sense. But yeah, like I just think that like sex is such, the sexual energy in itself, it's such a potent thing, and to anybody listening to this, I totally encourage you to like don't masturbate as much as you do, to the point where you can literally try going for like 21 days. And it was interesting because there was like a video online, and it was like guys who've done it for like 60 days and like 250, and they were sharing their experience. And overall, they were just saying like you know, like they felt like more like confidence. They had this like, they were just like, you can turn that into like this ability to create within this reality. So it's so easy for us to just be like, well, I know an ejaculation feels super awesome, and this can go for girls too, but like, you know, maybe you can just like play around a bit, but then like don't even just like go like to the, don't go past the threshold, which is something you can play with as a practice in itself, and that in itself can be incorporated into the sexual practice, where like based on some stuff that you can read, it sort of says that, you know, like you don't actually have to always end sex with the male ejaculating. Like if you're playing on that level, like the male could go through the whole process, the female can have like her ejaculations and her orgasms, and then like if the male retains his, then it's like actually just like really charging up both of them through this process. But yeah, there's lots to talk about with this, and of course we can invite people to join the after party hangout discussion that we'll have about facebook.com/ParadigmShiftRadio. So if you want to talk more, if you want to hang out with more shifty people from all over the world, then go to facebook.com/ParadigmShiftRadio, and you'll find the after party hangout link for that. So we only got just a few minutes left, and I don't really want to rush things here, so I'll just do the button draw real quick. So again, these are for the shift buttons, so you can use these to spark awesome conversations. ParadigmShiftCentral.com/buttons, and of course, another reminder: if people want to support this program, if you're a fan of it, then you can sign up and just like give some donation to the monthly, the Paradigm Shift Community Tip Jar, or sign up as a monthly supporter for a few dollars a month. So this week's winners of the shift buttons are, thanks to the awesome people who donate to the community fund, is Devin. All right, so this week's winner is Devin, so I will send him a message. So again, your tips, your contributions to the funding of this project help us give out more free shift buttons each week, which are changing the world. And at this point, people in the live chat, feel free to post your Facebook profiles and we'll segue this over to Michael. And Michael, you can get us going
Yeah.
on the closing meditation to like sort of embody, like what have we talked about? Where have we come from? Let's take a breath.
Let's do this. Let's do some deep breathing now. Some deep tantric breathing if you desire. So whatever is calling you in this moment, let's just all come into the breath together, and let's just offer this moment to one another in this community. Let's begin inviting the breath down into the body. And with each exhalation, begin now to expand your awareness and your consciousness to the very room that you're sitting in, or in the space that you're in, if you're outside or inside. Continue bringing your awareness to the breath. Allow yourself to be whole within this moment and within this experience. Inhaling deeply and exhaling just as deeply. Being here now, and just rest in the breath for the next few moments. Go ahead and bring your awareness back to the breath. Expand your awareness back to the space that you're in. Bring your hands to your heart center and feel the breath moving in and out of your body. Make this experience tactile. And welcome back to your paradigm shift experience.
Thanks, Michael. Cool. So literally only 30 seconds left in the live broadcast. You can find us in the After Party Hangout if you're following up on that. And of course, just thank you so much, everybody. And just letting you guys know, next week's episode is going to be a really cool one. We're going to have our guest on, Matthew Silver, the great performer. And some of you have seen his video. He's that guy who runs into the store on the internet with the drum and he's like, "Stop buying stuff. love is the answer. That guy. So we're gonna have him on, but we'll wrap up this episode. And yeah, death is just a transition, and sex is something to keep thinking about. So thank you so much, everybody, for being a part of this show. And I'm just gonna unmute everybody, and you guys can join me in saying farewell to the internet as I play the outro music. So everybody, join me in saying farewell to the internet. So Tom, Bonnie, Michael, everyone in Aaron.
You're divine.
1 minute from now.
I'm waving at my microphone right now.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Tom is
All right.
I'm
That's
actually
right.
gonna go.
See you in the future. All right. Thanks, guys. One love.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Paradigm Shift Radio. If you would like to connect with people where you are and continue the conversations further, then check out ParadigmShiftCentral.com/buttons to order your supply of shift buttons to share with people to help invite them to this global project while also helping make new friends and building local community where you are. Shift buttons are tools to hack the matrix and tap into the synchronistic nature of reality to accelerate our collective awakening. Enter the promo code PSR into your order to receive additional bonus buttons to your supply. Thank you again, and one love.